Zohar somewhat changes the terminology from Echud to Yachid. But then it also speaks about this Yachid on two different levels. Echud Ilah, the upper level of Yachid, and Echud Tata. So before we even move on to the different levels, there's a very important distinction between the word Echad and the word Yachid, okay? Because when you say Echad and you mean one, just conceptually, you're already entertaining the possibility of there being 2 and 3 and 4. So indeed, like I said, the very elementary understanding of this pasuk, the basis of this emunah that every yid is, that Moshe Rabbeinu is telling every yid that you need to come to understand that Hashem Elokeinu, this Hashem is Echad, it's one. Okay, on the elementary level, the word Echad means one, meaning that it's not 2, it's not 3, it's not multiple, it is only one. Okay. The word Yachid, however, Yachid means absolutely exclusive, there's nothing else. Echad, as I just said, allows for the possibility, the notion that there may be 2, but no, we're going to reject that. We're saying there's only one. Yachid means that there's no possibility. You can't even entertain the notion that there may be another God. Why? Because there is nothing but God. What does nothing but God mean? That means that absolutely everything is just some extension of this very quintessential essence, which is, of course, the essence of all that exists, and that is Hashem. So Hashem Echad, when you use the word Yachid, takes on a somewhat of a deeper meaning. It is not simply one as opposed to 2 or multiple, but rather it is the absolute only thing that exists. Only Hashem exists. So, we had somewhat of an elaborate discussion about this cultural kind of, what's the word, where we appropriate certain, titles to different people, going back to, the history of Tlom Chetfinim in Yeshiva, where some Bachim were known to be the Oivdim, and there were those that were the Maskilim, okay? So I want to approach this idea of Yachid, both from a Avodah perspective and from a Haskalah perspective, okay? So Avodah, just to recap, Avodah is basically, the teachings of Chassidus that develop character. Character meaning it develops your Avas Hashem, your love to Hashem, your Yiras Hashem, your Kabbalas oil, meaning your willingness to accept what Hashem, is, first of all, what Hashem is commanding us, and to the situations that Hashem puts us into, and so on and so forth. So that would be the Avodah, and certainly Chassidus contributes to that. But then we have the Haskalah of Chassidus, and the Haskalah of Chassidus is understanding this idea of Echad, this Yachid, in a very conceptual and intellectual way, okay? So let me use another term now that also fits into this whole picture. So we have Yachid, and we have what's called the Echud Ilah and the Echud Tata, the upper exclusivity of Hashem's existence, and what's called the lower exclusivity, the Yachid, the Echud Tata, the lower Yechud. I'm going to replace that with another word. That word is Bittul. It's hard to say what Bittul is, but it's a very general term. And the more general something is, then it's an indication of that it's a more abstract term. So let's look at this yichuda, this idea, this bittul, from the avoda level and from the haskola level. So bittul in the avoda level basically would mean that a person sets himself aside. Okay, now by nature, a person has an ego. It's one of the most fundamental elements of our character, very fundamental. Whole schools of psychology were built, right? Reference to our dear fellow Jew, Mr. Freud, right? And basically, it's a school of psychology that explains human behavior, and it's based on this notion of an ego. Okay, so it's pretty obvious, right? In Chassidus, we call it the Nefesh Habahamis. Now, one of the things about the Nefesh Habahamis is that the Nefesh Habahamis very pretty much begins his view, his perspective of reality. It all begins with his own existence. Okay, everything begins with your own self. In order to serve Hashem, the process of serving Hashem is bittul. What's bittul? Bittul is to undo the self, the putting the self aside. And there are many different levels, right? How much a person could become batul. Ultimately, we should be completely and totally batul. And everything that we do is dedicated to something beyond our own self, something that transcends ourselves. Okay. This is avodah. This is avodah, something that a person really needs to focus on and work on. And he develops it in stages. As a child, you're just by nature, you're just following basically the dictates of nature, which is basically just yourself, right? And what is chinuch? What is training a child? What is bringing up a child? Bringing up a child is that he should become less self-centered, less selfish, and more a giving person, even if it means sometimes that you have to sacrifice some of your own personal interests and so on. Okay, so that would be bittul in a very avodah sense. But now we're learning Shara Yichud Ve'emunah. And I told you before that Shara Yichud Ve'emunah is more the haskala of Chassidus. What does the haskala of Chassidus tell us when we're in reference to this idea of bittul? It's about existence. So, does anything really exist? Okay. Or is everything batul? This would be the meditation of Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echud. On the one hand, Hashem Echud on the avodah level means that we have to be completely subservient to Hashem to the point of even Masirus Nefesh. As a matter of fact, this is one of the basic meditations that one has to have when he thinks of Hashem Echud, that he has to be willing to have Masirus Nefesh. He has to be willing to put himself so totally aside, even if it means that he has to sacrifice his own life. Okay? We say the pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is at the end of the whole Yom Kippur. The whole shul at the very end is like the culmination of the whole Yom Kippur. The 25 hours of Yom Kippur is everybody screams Shema Yisrael at the top of their lungs, right? And it says in some Achzorim, it says that while we're saying that, we should have in mind that I am willing to sacrifice my life for the sanctity of Hashem. Okay. So that is the avodah approach to this pasuk. But then, of course, we also have another meditation, is that Hashem Echud. What's the word Echud? Echud is Aleph. Aleph is the Alufei Shalayla. The Alufei Shalayla means the total master of the world, which is Hashem. That master of the world, Echud, Ches means that there are 7. What's the Ches? There are many different levels of this world that exist. And then you have the Dalit, which represents the 4 different dimensions, right? And they're all one. They're all one. There's just one existence. That would be Yehuda, more as a Yachid, more the notion that there's nothing that exists but Hashem. So there you have it. right there in Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echud, you have the avodah meditation, which is to contemplate what would you do if you were asked to have Mesiras Nefesh, and at that moment to think in your mind that I am willing to literally sacrifice my life for Hashem. And the other is, and this is probably the one not so much that we focus on the end of Yom Kippur, but rather it's actually one of the meditations that's brought that every single day, that when you say that twice in a day, you say this pasuk Shema Yisrael, right? You should have in mind that it means that Hashem is exclusive. Everything that you see, all of the reality, with all of it, with everything that exists, right? It all basically, it's all boils down to one core essence, which is, of course, the existence of Hashem, which is completely and totally exclusive to the exclusion of absolutely everything else. Okay. But we still have to get to our conversation of Echud and Echud Tatar. So I'm going to begin first by speaking about Bittul, and I'm going to speak about Bittul first from the Avodah approach. Okay? Completely 100% dedicated, devoted, and completely given over in a very selfless way to Hashem and his mitzvahs, and so on and so forth. Okay. So number one, this bittul can be described in two different ways. Two ways. I'm trying to find where I could not be looking at myself the whole time, but rather the people that I'm talking to. So it used to be a thing that's gallery, and I can't find it now. I want gallery. How do I make this be gallery?
What is gallery?
I don't know. That's what I used to. I don't know. I can't find it. It's making me nervous because I'm literally looking at myself and talking to myself, and it's a little embarrassing, if people see me talking to myself. It's I don't. Okay, whatever. Okay, check. I don't know. There used to be a thing.
Swipe over a little.
What should I do? I have all these things here on the bottom. Mute, stop video, participants, chat, share screen, summary. I used to have something here. I don't know. Okay, whatever. Doesn't matter. Oh, there it is. Right there. I got it. Gallery. Okay, we're good. Found it. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Anyway, so bittul. Let's talk about bittul, and the way to talk about it is by using an example. We're going to use an example. Now, one of the examples that is used in Chassidus is the relationship that one has to a king. Okay, very common. We don't have kings today in our modern society. But kings is all throughout the Torah, right? And indeed, Hashem himself is referred to as our king, okay? So even though society perhaps has dropped the notion of king, we're going to still hang on to that notion because it's everywhere. As a matter of fact, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are really the days that we focus very much on Hashem being the king of the world. We actually changed the wording of the davening for those 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, all to focus on the fact that Hashem is our king. Okay, so let's start with our king and the relationship between our king. So in Chassidus, it speaks about the difference between, there's a contrast between the relationship of the servant to the king as opposed to the ben, the son of the king. Both are completely and totally committed and devoted to the king, right? The servant, because the servant wouldn't have a job if he wasn't committed and devoted to the king. The whole point of the servant is to implement, the orders and the desires of the king, and he does it very, with full commitment. He's a very devoted servant, a wonderful servant. Now, the truth is that Chassidus breaks down the Eved also into different levels of Eved, but let's keep it just as Eved in contrast to the Ben, the son of the king. Now, the son of the king is also we're talking about in a very nice, wonderful, not necessarily the kings you read about in novels and in literature. We're talking about what a king really is supposed to be, okay? A king is one who represents the heart of the nation, as Rashi tells us in Chumash. The king is the heart of the nation, right? And the people of the nation understand that it is through the king that one receives his sustenance and maintains, society to be a place that is habitable and so on and so forth. All the wonderful things that people here living on earth need. They're all being provided through the king, okay? Now, the Ben of the king, because he's his son, he's very much attached to the king. There's something about this relationship called a son, which is very interesting and very unique. And therefore, the degree of loyalty that the son has to the king compared to the degree of loyalty that an Eved has to the king is something that we can analyze and recognize. And that is basically that when you talk about the Eved, there are two separate entities. There's the king and there's the Eved who serves the king. As devoted and loyal as he may be, there are still two entities, the king and the Eved. I.e., the Eved has to actually overcome his self and his own interests in favor of the interests of the king. The Eved perhaps would rather be spending his time with his family. He's a normal human being. It's his wife's birthday. He wants to be home with his wife. That's his personal desire to celebrate, and all the kids are coming. They're going to have a big birthday party, and that's where the Eved wants to be. The king needs to get something accomplished. Who can accomplish it? The Eved. What does a good Eved do? The good Eved will put aside his own personal interest, spending time with his family, and he'll tell his family, I'm sorry, I wish I could be here with you, but the king comes first. And therefore, unfortunately, we'll have to maybe take a rain check and have the party another time. I will not be present. The king needs me, okay? Now, that's an example of some real devotion, real loyalty. That's bittul of the Eved. He's bottle. That's the word, bottle. He's bottle to the king. He's willing to sacrifice, his own desires for the needs and the desires of the king. But at the end of the day, there are still two different entities. There's the Eved, and then there is the king. In the case of the Ben, we're talking about, a healthy relationship between a father and a son, the king and the prince, right? If the king wants something, and he's truly a connected and a devoted son, then that's what he wants. So if therefore it means that he has to engage in whatever he has to do, because this is what the king needs, that's what the Ben wants. He doesn't have any other desire. The only thing that exists for him is his father, the king, and whatever it is that the father, the king, wants or needs. That's all he knows. Now, again, this might not always be what you read in the novels and so on and so forth, right? But we're using this as an analogy, so it's more you have to use your imagination, right? But it's about making a point. The point is that this is a different kind of a bittul over here. This bittul is a bittul where the son is so bottled to the king that nothing else exists but the king. he would never even entertain the thought that maybe I'd rather be doing something else. Because it's not true. He would not rather do something else. He would only want to do what the king wants. That's a higher level of bittul. So here you have the word bittul. What bittul means that you've completely self-undid yourself, right? But nonetheless, we're able to look at this idea of bittul, this self-undoing, this self-nullification, if you want to call it, right? But on different levels. They're both completely bittul. But the Eved has something else that he has to be mevatel. There's some other desire that he has to undo. Whereas in the case of the Ben, there's nothing to undo because his desire and the king's desire is one and the same. You see where I'm getting at. I'm talking here more, and again, I'm going to use the term the avoida different approach, where it's about your character and about your behavior. And we're making the comparison of how the Eved, the servant, behaves and how the Ben behaves. This, by the way, parallels the Echud Ilah and the Echud Tata. Okay, just so you have an idea of where we're going with this. Okay, so this is the bittul. If I may, I'm going to introduce another terminology that's used in Chassidus, and that is what's called, in the word bittul itself, we find that Chassidus speaks about what's called bittul hayesh and bittul b'metzius. Now, that's hard to translate into English. Metzius is existence, just the very existence. So bittul b'metzius would be that there is no metzius. It's batul. There's no state of existence, right? So let's take this back to the son of the king. The son of the king is doing everything that the king wants. He's a different person, but he doesn't have any other desires. There's only one metzius. The metzius is the existence of the king. There is no separate existence that has to be undone. The Eved, on the other hand, the term, the kind of bittul that would apply to the Eved is called bittul hayesh. What is yesh? Yesh also, these are abstract terms, but this is the terminology that's used in Chassidus. Yesh. If you know Hebrew, you know yesh, yeshli, yesh. Yesh bo, yesh sham, yesh. Yesh means there is, right? But when we say yesh, and the way the word is used in Chassidus is, there is something independent. There is yesh. There's something. If you want to insult somebody in the Chassidish culture, you'll tell them, you won't say you're so arrogant. You'll say you're such a yesh. You're such a yesh, right? No, Chaim, have you ever been told you're a yesh? Have you ever told anybody that? Yeah.
I've definitely been told.
You say, yesh, you're a yesh. That's the worst thing you can tell somebody, right? What you're telling him is that you're an egotistical, arrogant person. That's what a yesh is, right? So yesh means you're here. Oh, look at that. So somebody who has bittul b'metzius, he walks in the room, you don't even notice him. Right? There's a meeting going on. He sits down quietly. Someone who has yesh is projection. I'm here, right? So what's the projection? He walks in the room, and before he even knows what everybody's talking about, he already has something to say. That's an extreme example of a person who's a yesh. Okay. The Eved, so he's not that bad. He already worked on his yesh. You did the bittul of his yesh. But it's still there. There is something there that is outside of the purview of the king, right? He wants to go fishing. He wants to spend the time with his family, right? That's the yesh. That's some other state of existence that actually somewhat is trying to project itself. The bittul is the bittul hayesh. He undoes his bittul, right? Okay. I'm going to now bring in another two terms. And they parallel also these two levels. So let's review over here. We're talking about if I would be doing this in a classroom, I'd have it all up on the board, right? So we have, first of all, we have this very abstract terminology of the exclusivity of Hashem, Echud Elah, Echud Tata. Ben Melech, the son of the king, Eved Melech. Bittul Hayesh, Bittul B'Metzias. So you get it? So you have Echud Elah, parallels the son of the king, which in Chassidic terminology would be Bittul B'Metzias. That's on the upper level. It's a more complete. Then you have, on the lower level, you have Echud Tata, that's what it means, lower level of the Echud of Hashem. Then you have, parallel to that, the Eved, who's very bottle to the king, but he has another yesh that he has to make bottle, right? Then, in Chassidus, it's called Bittul Hayesh, okay? Now I'm going to bring in two other terms, right? And that would be from the first book of Tanya. What do we have in the first book of Tanya? The first book of Tanya is speaking to the Beinoni, right? What's the Beinoni? The Beinoni is an average person. What is an average person? By nature, people have these innate desires, these innate drives and passions, right? And what is serving Hashem? Serving Hashem means that you have to overcome them. That's the job of a Beinoni. How many times does the Alter Rebbe have to tell us that you have this nefesh habamis? Don't let it get you depressed. It's basically, and you look in Perek 29 of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that's who you are. Okay. I think I mentioned this once. I've years ago to drive to work, so like 40 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. And I was listening to the radio, and there was this advertisement that used to be on the radio. It was an advertisement for some Kentucky Fried Chicken, I think, or whatever, right? And basically, what the advertisement was that a fox had broken in to the middle of the night. He broke into the Kentucky Fried Chicken place, right? And he was feasting on some chicken. So he had as a siren, and the police come and they catch the fox, right? They catch the fox. Sir, you're under arrest, for trespassing or whatever, unlawful, whatever. And the fox is pleading. He says, but I'm a fox. I'm a fox. That's what I do. That's what I do. Right? So he's trying to defend himself. Well, what do you expect of me? I'm a fox, right? This is what a fox does. Whatever. There's something about that advertisement that here I am, 30 years later, and I'm repeating this to a very sophisticated audience over here. But that's the point. The Alter Rebbe says, listen, you know what? A Beinoni is a person who's a normal person who happens to have what's called a nefesh habamis. What this nefesh habamis is going to do, sometimes it's going to, kind of draw you, entice you into things that with your nefesh halakis that you shouldn't be doing. Okay? The whole purpose is for your nefesh halakis to prevail over that nefesh habamis, right? That's what it's all about. That is the Beinoni. Okay? And that's basically what this whole world is all about. The world is about the Beinoni, the person who prevails over some other forces within his own conscious self. Okay, he's called the Beinoni. Now, if you had to put the Beinoni on the two, right? We have the top list: Echud Elah, Ben Melech, and the Bittul B'Metzias, and then you have the lower level, which would be the Echud Tata, the lower exclusivity of Hashem. Then you have the Eved Melech. And then you have what's called the Bittul Hayesh. Where does the Beinoni go? If you're going to put him parallel to this, he goes on the bottom, right? He has another yesh. His other yesh is his nefesh habamis, his animal soul, the one that's constantly trying to lure him into where he shouldn't go, right? What does he do? He prevails over it. So what is he doing? There's something that's completely independent of Hashem's desire and plan for your life, right? He has his own plans, and he has to be mevatel that. He has to overcome that. What is that contrast with in the first book of Tanya? With the person called the tzaddik. of which the Alter Rebbe tells us is very rare. Hashem did not create this world and give a Torah for tzaddikim. He actually gave it for the Beinonim, right? Because what's the tzaddik? It's almost like a real 100% perfect tzaddik doesn't even exist in this world. It's more like some kind of a conceptual thing. He has no nefesh habahamis. Can you imagine somebody who has no nefesh habahamis? Meaning that there is no separate desire in his life other than what his nefesh elokis wants. What's his nefesh elokis? His nefesh elokis, as the Alter Rebbe tells us in the second chapter, is the son of the king. Being the son of the king, all he wants is what the king wants. So imagine a person in this world who has absolutely no separate, independent sense of self other than the existence of Hashem. Other than the existence of Hashem. He doesn't have to fight his Yetzer Hara. It just comes naturally to him. Now that's a very, very rare individual. Why does the Alter Rebbe even tell us about it? Because the truth is that in some way we are able to develop that level in some sort of way in individual challenges that we have in our life. For example, I'm going to tell you something that of the 5 people that I see on this screen, I can tell you that myself and Chaim Itkin never went to McDonald's. Okay? So I don't know about the rest of you guys. Maybe at some point in your previous life, maybe you did go to McDonald's. Whatever. I'm not holding this against you. What I'm trying to say is that when it comes to McDonald's, I certainly have absolutely no desire to ever step into whatever, one of these places and have myself a cheeseburger. I don't have no desire. Okay. And Chaim, is that true for you? Okay. Somebody, however, who is say someone who came to Yiddishkeit at some point in his life, and previously he may have enjoyed very much something that the Torah tells us you're not allowed to have, right? My approach to Wendy's and McDonald's is I'm a tzaddik. I don't have a Yetzer Hara for that. Chaim, you're a tzaddik. You don't have a Yetzer Hara. Now, you guys, maybe at one time, I'm sorry, I'm making a distinction. We're all one and we're all in this together. But just for the case of making my point, you may perhaps have some fond memories of whatever, right? Maybe you actually pass by and you might even be somewhat tempted. Probably not. You know why probably not? Because Mistama, you already also reached the level of tzaddik where you eliminated that Yetzer Hara, okay? But I can tell you for all of us here, there's still plenty of other Yetzer Hara we have. I shouldn't speak for Chaim. Chaim, do you have a Yetzer Hara for anything in your life?
Some things.
No, you think about it. You come up with
There are things I've Yetzer Hara for, yep.
Okay. But we all have whatever. Yetzer Hara is a fact of life. Okay? And if it's not for this, we know, okay, I'm a tzaddik when it comes to that, perhaps, or to some sort of tzaddik when it comes to that. Okay? Anyway, so yeah. So once we have already these 2 columns over here with the upper level and everything that parallels that, and the lower level, we might as well put in already the Baal Tshuva and the person who is, let's say, always from, right? Or the Baal Tshuva who had to overcome a previous lifestyle in favor of a lifestyle that's in accordance to Hashem's plan, right? So that again fits right into this whole picture, right? So there you have it. Echud Elah, Echud Tato. Echud Elah, let's go to the end. Tzaddik. Beinoni or Baal Tshuva. Beinoni and Baal Tshuva are actually interchangeable terms because every Beinoni sometimes succumbs to his Yetzer Hara, and then he does tshuva, and he's a Baal Tshuva. So we're all Bali Tshuva, right? Everybody in their own personal thing. But that's what we are. A Beinoni is very, very similar. Not similar. It parallels 100%. It's synonymous with Baal Tshuva. That's why we have Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is for everybody, right? not just the tzaddikim. Because there are no tzaddikim. Everybody has something to do on Yom Kippur, some tshuva to do, so we're all balei tshuva. We're all balei tshuva, right? Having said that, it becomes very clear that when Hashem created us creatures here in this world, he never intended for us to be tzaddikim. He intended us to be beinonim. And he went out on a limb knowing that by creating us with the Yetzer Hara, once in a while, we're actually going to slip. With some slip more, some slip less, whatever. We're all going to slip. For whatever reason, that is what Hashem had in mind when he created this world. This is who he wanted in this world. People who struggle with another yesh. And they have to prevail over the yesh in favor of the true Metzius, which is the existence of Hashem. Now, for the next 2 minutes, I'm going to take this back to the Haskalah level, okay? The Echud Elah and the Echud Tata from the existential perspective, which is what the Alter Rebbe discusses in Tanya. When you think from a philosophical perspective about the very nature of existence, right? There is existence where Yehuda means there's nothing but Hashem. Nothing but Hashem. Everything is Hashem. The example that the Alter Rebbe uses, he uses a very physical example, and he speaks about light. We don't have too much time here, so I'm going to go very quickly through this. Light is an amazing feature that we get to observe, and it has so many characteristics that are so intriguing and interesting. But one of the things is that light is coming from its source. It doesn't seem to have any existence, right? But it has an appearance of an existence. Again, this needs a lot more explanation. It's really what the Alter Rebbe is talking about now, currently in Tanya. But then you have the light, the way the light is still in its source. When it's still in the source, nothing really exists except for the source and not the light. I know I'm not really doing this full justice. I'm rushing through this. But the bottom line is that when we say Hashem Echud, there is the Hashem Echud where we scream on Yom Kippur that I'm willing to be Meiser Nafshi. I'm willing to totally and completely give my life over to Hashem. Okay. Then you have the Hashem Echad contemplation, the meditation, is one that there is absolutely nothing but Hashem. The implications of this are many. We'll Hashem get to it at another time. But at the same time, if that's true, that there's absolutely nothing but Hashem, then why is there even the notion of the Echud Tata? The Echud Tata is that when Hashem created the world, he created the world so that there can be a sense of existence, of independence. It doesn't truly have an independence, but it has this sense of independence. Okay? That's like the light outside of its source, where it seems to exist independent of its source, when truly it does not. Okay? The idea of this level of Yehuda, the Yehuda Tata, that Hashem created the world so that the world can have a sense of self-existence, is really the source of the reason why Hashem created the Beinoni and not Tzadikim. Tzadikim are very rare. Because if you were philosophically completely, totally in tune with this notion that there's nothing but Hashem, right? Then you couldn't have a Yetzer Hara. Hashem wanted us to have a Yetzer Hara and work with it. And that's why there exists what's called the Echud Tata, which is a state of existence where even though in the ultimate truth there is absolutely nothing but Hashem, but the way Hashem designed the world was that the world should exist so that there can be this notion that it does have a sense of self-independence, right? And that's the level of Hashem Echad, we speak about Echud, the Aleph, but then there's a whole array of all kinds of existence, right? There's multiplicity. There's so many different things, right? Yes, we have to see it like that, but then ultimately to come to the recognition that it is ultimately all really truly just one exclusive existence, which is the existence of Hashem. Anyway, so that brings us to the end of this series on the Echud and the Echud Tata, although there's certainly much more to be discussed in that regard. Okay, so good Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good job.
A whole week, by the way, we are actually serving Hashem on the lower level, because a whole week we're dealing with a world that exists and then might not be completely aligned with Hashem, and that's our job, to realign it. Shabbos represents the time where everything is absolutely complete. There's no work to be done because everything is already done, right? And it's a time of Yichud Ilah where we enjoy actually just the very existence of Hashem with no distractions whatsoever. Okay, so have a good Yichud Ilah Shabbos, and that'll give you the strength to make it through the next 6 days of Yichud Tato, right? Working as a Beinani. And I'll leave it with that. Okay, good Shabbos, everyone.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Good Shabbos, Moshe. Good Shabbos, Mike.
Shabbos, good Shabbos.